minutes to start. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nalene Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Bhaskatya Dejatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gavaka Preta His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, ISKCON's Pandracharya Srila Prabhupada, Shri Radhagolokananda Ki, Shri Krishna Balaram Ki, Shri Giri Govardhan Ki, Shri Gaunitai Ki, Sankirtan Yajna Ki, Gaur Premanande. All glories to their soul devotees. All glories to their soul devotees. All glories to their soul devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, devotees, how nice to be here with you all. Thank you for taking an interest in this seminar and the extremely important subject matter. It really is important. So thank you for taking an interest in it, and my hope, and I've done this before, just one time, this particular seminar in South Africa. We had a retreat for about 4 days up in the mountains. There were about 120 or 130 or something devotees there. Sure, it was really good. Really good. We explored the subject. We had some group discussions, smaller groups, like those of you sitting on one table, you'd be a group and you'd discuss some things. We had some dramas. I don't know if we have any actors or actresses here. Some of you may find that you have such talents, but you didn't know. Yes. We may do something like that. Let's see. Of course, we don't have so much time, so it is a bit abbreviated, but despite that, I'm sure we'll be able to go into some really important things and will be very helpful. And I would hope that at the end, tomorrow night, you'll come out really feeling spiritually enriched, and having gathered some information which you can use in practical terms to improve your lives in Krishna consciousness. At this point also, a special word of thanks to His Grace Radha Mohan Prabhu, who's allowed us. Yes, that's it. Give him a round of applause. I'm not sure where he is, but anyway. Oh, there you are. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Bahut dhanyavad. Nandri. Right. Yeah. Really, what a nice facility. Let's see how we go. Maybe tomorrow I don't know if there's an extra table or two. We don't want you to be sort of cramped. Okay, so let us make a start. We have given out, I hope you all have, there's just very, very simple outline. It's really very simple. Does anyone not have that? Okay, so I take it you all do. That's good. That'll just give you an idea of what we're going to, the course we're going to be taking through this subject. First thing, just some prayers actually. Namo Aham Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakaptarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha Paditanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. All right, so let us begin. And this first little point I'll introduce right now. I mean, this is all part of the introduction, initial introduction, is that I have a fear, you could say. The fear is that we may go through various things, pieces of information and exercises and thinking about things, and even, like I said, maybe some dramas to illustrate some things. But the fear is that the information is, on a certain level at least, it's just information. And relationships require, for them to really work, they require some work. They do. I think all of you who are a little older, who are married and been married for some time. I mean, not only people who are married, but that's a pretty good example that you got to work on it, on the relationship. And it doesn't just happen spontaneously. So, like on our level, our stage of Krishna consciousness, we are doing sadhana bhakti. And sadhana means practice. Practice, like when you're learning anything, basically, you have to practice. Like, I remember when I learned how to drive a motor car, I was, devotees, 13 years old, not 30, but tres. I was 13, and my mother taught me how to drive. It's a fact, in New Zealand. And the first thing she did was put me in the driver's seat and told me how to turn it on. So I got that done successfully. And then there's the clutch. So put my foot on the clutch, now into gear. It was a column shift, old car. Now let the clutch out slowly. In my language as a 13-year-old, the word slowly didn't really exist. And so, it was all go for it. So I let my foot off the clutch far too fast. And the car almost went up vertically. It just leapt forward and stopped. And the engine cut out. Yeah. So it took some work to learn how to drive. My first computer, one devotee, Sridhar Swami, you may have heard of him from New York, he bought me my first computer. And then I figured out how to turn it on, but I couldn't figure out how to turn it off. Yes. So I just switched it off. I didn't, the usual thing, you go in and you click on something to turn it off. So anyway, learning something takes some time and some practice, and developing relationships and developing capabilities for conducting and developing relationships takes some work and practice, and therefore it's a natural part of sadhana bhakti, because sadhana means to practice. Yes. So we have to practice chanting Hare Krishna. I remember when I first started chanting, the first time I chanted on beads. It was really difficult. But then I practiced and I got the hang of it. And I think for all of us, we may have had a similar experience. At first it's a bit foreign. But we practice and we get into it. Practice makes perfect, as they say. So my fear is like that we'll get some information and then we may just forget it, rather than try and apply it and practice it and go back over the information and try again and all that sort of thing. Because relationships, an important part of relationships is to not be self-centered, to consider the other person or people in the material world. Just because we're conditioned souls, we have this fundamental and foundational characteristic that we would like to be the most important person and the center of attention. We may not be directly thinking exactly that, but in effect it's like that. Yeah. So therefore, that's false ego. False ego. The desire for prominence. Yeah. And so on like that. So it's false ego. And the thing about our program, what we're going to do, we're going to try, devotees, to puncture our false ego. Like a balloon or an inflatable tire or something of that sort. You can puncture it and it goes down. And oftentimes, particularly balloons, children's balloons, that's it. It's finished. The thing with the false ego, if we look at it like that, the false ego is self-inflating. You don't have to do anything to blow it up. It blows itself up. Self-inflating. Back in South Africa, I have an exercise mat. It's self-inflating. You just open the thing and you don't need to blow in it. It just starts inflating. So the false ego, that sense of importance, the desire for attention, and different variations on that theme, you can puncture it, and I think we will in certain respects today and tomorrow, but it's self-inflating. You turn around and it's back up again. You didn't try to make it come up. It just came up. So really that's the essence of my fear, that we may gain a lot actually, but then we'll forget it because life, you just go back to life and life goes on and you get preoccupied. Yeah. So what we want to do is go deep into the subject matter, try to take it seriously, and afterwards continue applying it. Yes, applying it. Right, so let me just have a look here. Right. Okay, so okay, that's just by the way of introduction, a little bit about the theme. I mean, some of these headings are slightly abstract. Some examples, there are some verses I want to read through, which are just because they're really nice, and they're about relationships. I'd suggest that you write down the verse numbers of these verses, which I'll read right now. I'll just read the translations. First of all, I'll read Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 29, verse 17. Toi, 29, 17. Okay. Yeah, toi, 29, 17. It's Lord Kapila speaking to Devahuti. And it's about relationships with different types of devotees, because not all relationships are the same. There are relationships with seniors, equals, and juniors. In a nutshell, we're going to look at each of those varieties in some depth. Seniors, equals, and juniors, those who are senior to us, those who are more or less equal, and those who are junior. So here we go. The pure devotee, incidentally, that's you, the pure devotee, should execute devotional service by giving the greatest respect to the spiritual master and the acharyas. He should be compassionate to the poor. In this context, the poor, well, it could mean just the poor also, but the juniors who are, trying to get into Krishna consciousness, and in some cases, it's a bit of a battle for them to really get into it. So, compassionate towards the poor and or the juniors, and make friendship with persons who are his equals. But all his activities should be executed under regulation and with control of the senses. So 3 categories. If you look at your little outline, you'll see we talk about relationships with seniors, juniors, and equals like that. So here's another one. This is now 4834. Katra, wheat. Tront, kat. This is Narada Muni speaking to Dhruva. Every man and every woman, every person should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified, he should be compassionate. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. And Narada now, he's going to make, there's just one little further sentence, and it is just so deep, it's amazing. Listen to this, and fasten your seatbelts. In this way, by relating with these four types of people, more qualified or senior, less qualified or junior, and so on equal, these categories. So if you relate with them nicely, as this verse describes and the one we read first, Narada Muni says, in this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Now, what do you think of that? What a statement is that? If you just learn how to interact and have relationships with these three categories of devotees, seniors equal juniors, then, according to Narada Muni, and therefore it must be right, then if you can really do it nicely, you'll never be affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. You know what are the threefold miseries? They're miseries coming from your own body and mind. That's one type. Technically it's called adhyatmic, atma, it's about you. Then there's adibautic, miseries coming from other living entities. Like, I got attacked by a vicious mosquito. I won't tell you what I did to him, but I got attacked by him. Yeah, so that's a misery coming from another living entity. Or could just be another person, who gives you some trouble. And then there's adidaivic, which Prabhupada sometimes presents as miseries coming just from material nature. But then again, he also translates it, because this term daiva usually or often means like there's some control, like demigods. So miseries coming from the weather, or like COVID. COVID is adidaivic, coming under the control of demigods, the COVID demigods. So anyway, in this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries. Whew, that's really deep. Okay, I'll just read one more. Actually, it's two verses together. It is, well, maybe I'll read a couple more. But this now is 7:4, 31 and 32. Set, cut, 31 et 32. And this is talking about Prahlad Maharaj. He was completely cultured as a qualified Brahmin, having very good character and being determined to understand the absolute truth. He had full control of his senses and mind. And you might say that, well, what these couple of sentences I just read right now, what's it got to do with relationships? But I'll tell you one thing, that particularly this last sentence I just read, he had full control of his senses and mind. It's very related to devotee relationships, because if you don't have at least sufficient control over your senses and your mind, then it's more or less inevitable that you are going to damage at least one of your relationships. Yeah, because relationships become damaged oftentimes because we interact with the other person or persons in thoughtless, insensitive, not really caring ways, and people get hurt and become upset. So ultimately, this is actually an extremely important part of devotee relationships. So anyway, I carry on, same translation. Like the super soul, he was kind to every living entity and was the best friend of everyone. To respectable persons, he acted exactly like a menial servant. To the poor, he was like a father. To his equals, he was attached like a sympathetic brother. And he considered his teachers, spiritual masters, and older godbrothers to be as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was completely free from unnatural pride that might have arisen from his good education, riches, beauty, aristocracy, and so on. Okay, now, so just one last verse. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, chapter 30, verse 8. Is it 438? Yeah, it's 438. 438. And this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead speaking to the Prachetas. My dear sons of the King, I am very much pleased by the friendly relationships among you. All of you are engaged in one occupation, devotional service. I am so pleased with your mutual friendship that I wish you all good fortune. Now you may ask a benediction of me. So anyway, the point there, of course, is that it's very pleasing to the Lord when we have nice Vaishnava relationships. These were brothers, the Prachetas are brothers, so they're kind of like equals or thereabouts. So really nice friendly relationships. Okay, devotees. Now listen, my friend. Okay. Oi. Let's see, what next? Right, so next thing, right, building relationships. Just an introduction to the idea of building relationships, or at least one particularly important part of it. We need to understand. Some of you may be familiar with this concept. It's not just like a devotee concept. It's just a common sense concept. But you know what they say about common sense, right? It's not very common. Yeah. That's the problem with common sense. It's really not very common. So now the point is, the principle is this, and write this down. I hope you're equipped with, a pen and paper and so on. But relationships can be seen as being like bank accounts. You may have heard this concept before. Relationships are like bank accounts. And I assume everybody here has got a bank account or two or three or whatever. So you know how it works. You deposit money, you withdraw money, and you deposit money, and you withdraw it, and you get some interest. Or, maybe you go into overdraft, and you have to pay some interest. So relationships, it's really quite a useful concept to bear in mind that your relationships are like bank accounts. Means when you treat people nicely, that you have just made a deposit in their, or in your, we actually call them emotional bank accounts. It's more emotional than anything, usually. So when you treat another devotee or just another person nicely, you have made a deposit into your emotional bank account with that person. They now are feeling better about you than they were just a few minutes ago. I mean, they may have already been feeling nice towards you, but now they'll be feeling nicer. Then, yes, and it's such a simple concept, isn't it? Prabhupada said, one thing Prabhupada said, some things are so simple, you may miss them. They're so simple. And this is such a thing. What happens when you treat people in different ways? So, yes, if you offend a person, let's say a devotee, if you offend and they feel offended, then what have you done? You have made a withdrawal from your emotional bank account with that person. And you know what bank accounts are like. You can only withdraw so much, and then you go bankrupt. Yeah. So you can only offend someone, and actually it applies to, I would say, basically, literally everyone in your life. You can only offend them so far, and then you'll destroy the relationship. And you may not be able to recover the relationship. So, yeah, we'll go through a whole thing about how you make withdrawals, what you do, but I think you get the idea. If you lie to one of your friends, and then they find out, then you've got a withdrawal there. Their feeling towards you inevitably, pretty much inevitably, will go down unless they're really transcendental. People who are really transcendental, I mean, you can try and kill them. Or like, the story of Bhrigu Muni, when he tested Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu. With Lord Shiva, and it was Lord Brahma first, his father. He wasn't respectful when he met him. And Brahma was going to kill him. And then with his brother Lord Shiva, Lord Shiva came to embrace him, and Bhrigu Muni jumped back. He's just acting to test them. Just, get away from me, you filthy person, being. And Lord Shiva was going to kill him too. But then he went to Lord Vishnu. And if you know the story, you'd know. He walked up to Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu was in Yoga Nidra, his feet being massaged by Lakshmi Devi. And Bhrigu Muni walked up to him and kicked him in the chest, which of course woke up Lord Vishnu, and he understood, wow, he kicked me in the chest. But Lord Vishnu, because he's really, there are degrees of transcendence. He's really transcendental. So Lord Vishnu said, "Oh, Bhrigu, I'm so sorry. I hope you didn't hurt your soft lotus foot on my hard chest." I think many of us are not on that level. And he actually thanked him that even my wife, she's never embraced me. She doesn't come any closer than my feet. But now I've got some dust from your lotus feet on my chest. Maybe now she'll embrace me. Thank you so much. That's pretty transcendental, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not on that level, I can tell you. So yeah, if you lie, if you cheat, if you talk behind someone's back, then you make withdrawals from that person's emotional, your emotional bank account with that person. If you're judgmental, if you're not supportive when they're in difficulty, if you get angry with them, if you betray them, if you're ungrateful to them, and all these things. So this is what happens in this world. And, if you don't want to go through it, well, don't take birth again. Have any of you ever been criticized? None of you. Just say, "Oh, we have one." If you want to know, you can ask her. Did you ever criticize anyone yourself? We have one here. We have two, actually. If you want to know what it's like, you can ask them, if you don't know. Yeah, but by making withdrawals from, if you make withdrawals from enough people, your bank account, your emotional bank accounts with enough people, you'll end up with no friends. Yeah. And you'll end up with enemies even, or people who just, they just can't really tolerate you. I can tell you a tiny little story about Srila Prabhupada with one devotee. You may have heard the story, it's one I've told many times. A devotee was complaining to Prabhupada that such and such, some other devotee, he is like this, and he's like that, and he's like something else, and he's too much, and I can't work with him. And Prabhupada said, "No, he's a devotee. Try to tolerate him." But the devotee said, "But Prabhupada, he's like this, and that, and so on, and I can't work with him." And Srila Prabhupada said, "No, he is a devotee. Just try to tolerate him like I tolerate you." So, don't worry. In this world, I would say close to 100% sure, there's at least one person who is just tolerating you. Even though we tend to think we're sort of very nice people. How could someone not like me? I like me. But usually there's at least one person who, when he or she sees you coming, they think, "Oh no." So make a note of that. Your relationships are like emotional bank accounts. And you got to be careful. Try and keep making deposits. And I don't mean in artificial ways, just, like that, but actually dealing nicely with them. And this will help your relationships. Okay, now devotees, let's see. Yeah. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to tell you a story. And this story, devotees, believe me, it's a bit of a shocker. The good news is it's not true. The bad news is it's a bit of a shocker. Yeah. And even, you might even find it a little offensive. I mean, in a certain sense. But there is a very important point to it in the end. So, in ISKCON Mauritius, there's a number of temples, but there was one temple. I will not mention which temple. You could try and take a guess, but it's not true anyway, this story. But yeah, there was one temple, and the temple president, as usual, was suffering from the problem of the temple not having enough money. This is sort of often the constitutional position of the temple president, a shortage of funds. So, yeah, but now the temple president wanted to get a new Vyasasan for Srila Prabhupada, but he didn't have money. It was really difficult. So he would spend a whole lot of time, even every day, thinking, how am I going to get money, some fundraising thing to get a nice new Vyasasan for a life-size deity of Srila Prabhupada. So one day, one devotee, like not one of the really regular devotees who's chanting his rounds, but sort of, someone who comes to the Sunday feast sometimes. That sort of devotee, festivals. Like we used to, when I first joined in London, we would have our Sunday program, and at the end would be the arati, like 20-something minutes arati, and then would be the feast. And there was a few very specific devotees who would come in just when the peacock fan was being offered. And the feast is going to be in 5 minutes or so. Yeah, and the peacock fan. So we called them Krishna's fan club. Yeah. Right, so anyway, this person was a bit like that. Yeah, he came sometimes. Yeah. So anyway, this fellow came in. He's in a state. He says, my wife, my strife. My wife is driving me crazy. She always criticizes me. She never makes nice prasadam. And she never, she's always got her hair sort of all over the place. And, she doesn't dress nicely. And she's just too much. I cannot take it. She must die. And you must help me. And the temple president now, he's shocked. What on earth is this? What is this? So, but he said, okay, just hang on. Just let me think about it, come back tomorrow or the next day, and let me just think about this. So what he did, he sent a devotee to their house. I mean, not into, but around the side to sort of listen through the windows to what's being said in the house. So that devotee sort of 007 spy, he went to spy on the wife to see what is she really like. So he's listening through the window and he hears the wife complaining to someone that my husband, he is too much. He doesn't give me enough money to get nice food, so I give him, every day it's shusha. And when it's not shusha, it's gros pois. And he complains, well, what am I meant to do? He doesn't give me enough money. And he doesn't give me proper clothes. And he always criticizes me. So, therefore, I think she's speaking to one of her neighbors or friends. Whenever he comes home, I give him a hard time. I give him a really hard time. I try to give him a harder time than he gives me. Yeah, because he's too much. So the spy went back and reported back to the temple president, who understood that the wife is, you could say, cruel to the husband because he's cruel to her. Yeah. So he thought and he thought of a clever plan. Listen to this, devotees. And don't forget, this is not a real story, all right? Yeah. So, right. So the fellow came back next day or like that. And the temple president said, there is a statement in the 13th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. You get that? It's okay, just relax. There's a statement in the 13th canto that if we make a promise to Krishna, but somehow we don't keep it, our wife will die. 13th canto. I believe it's also in the 19th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So if we make a promise to Krishna, but we don't keep the promise, our wife dies. So, the man said, that's great. I like that. So the leader, the temple president said, listen, I tell you what, make a promise. Come in front of Krishna. They had, I don't know, deities perhaps. Make a promise to Krishna. Promise. You just say, I will buy a new Vyasasam for Srila Prabhupada. But then don't buy it. Yes. And your wife will die. 13th canto. There you go. So the man said, good plan. Yeah, so he took a vow. Then he's feeling better. But then suddenly he said, wait a minute. How long does it take before she dies? Because I don't know if I can take any more. So I'm going to go crazy. Yeah. How long will it take before Krishna knows I'm not going to buy him a new Prabhupada, a new Vyasasam? So the president said, well, what you do, just go in front of Krishna and say, I'm going to buy a new Vyasasam for Srila Prabhupada, and then 2 minutes later say, I'm not going to buy a Vyasasam for Prabhupada. There you go. So the fellow did that. And the president, so he asked the president, how long before she dies? President said, normally 3 weeks. So, and the man said, how am I going to survive another 3 weeks with this woman? It's intolerable. I just cannot deal with it. And the president said, well, listen, I have a suggestion. Why don't you see, it's only going to be 3 weeks. It's not going to be long. Why don't you just treat her nicely for 3 weeks? Why don't you just do that? Treat her nicely. And then, she'll have a nice send-off at the end. Just treat her nicely for 3 weeks. And look after her. Really facilitate her and, So she's really happy. She can die in a happy state of mind. And so the man said, okay then. Okay. And off he went. So 3 weeks, right. The man came back in 2 weeks. And he said, I have a serious problem now. I am being really nice to my wife. And you know what happened? She is being really nice to me. And I don't know what to do now because she's going to die in a week and I don't want it. So what can I do? Yeah, it's a big problem. And the president said, I know exactly what you do. You buy the Vyasa for Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, you fulfill your promise, she won't die. So off he went and he got a really nice Vyasa for Srila Prabhupada. And believe it or not, the wife didn't die. And they became a happy, Krishna-conscious family. So, I'm sorry if the story's a bit, strange or something like that. But, there's a principle there. And it's just, it's a very simple principle. It's not, as they say, rocket science, like relationship rocket science, if you understand what that means. Like high-level, complex, how to deal with difficult people type of relationship advice. The thing is, as just a very simple reality, a very important part of nice devotee relationships is simply being nice. And you might think, oh, come on. We want to learn about all the tricky stuff and, all that technical stuff. But this is just a very important general point. If we develop the practice of being nice to other devotees, that will solve so many, such a great percentage, if not all, of our problematic devotee relationships. Yeah. So here's something you can do. Normally we do this over 4 days. So I tell the people to do this and do it for the next few days and see how it goes. But one thing you can do is you can memorize the 26 qualities of a devotee. And when you are interacting with the other devotees, as inevitably you're going to be doing regularly, you try and see, deliberately, consciously, try and see, of those 26 devotee qualities, which quality or qualities is this devotee displaying here? And make a note of it. And then thank the devotee and tell the devotee that I saw you were doing this or that, and that's one of the 26 qualities. You are exhibiting it very nicely. Thank you so much for being a good example of Krishna consciousness. And you know what? You'll make such a nice deposit in your emotional bank account with them. And it will help you. It'll help you if you work on this, rather than either looking for faults and being sensitive to other devotees' faults, or just sort of not being interested. You'll find that you start naturally relating with other devotees in ways which please them, and therefore your relationships with them will become better. And it doesn't have to be like artificial. You should look and see, what quality does this devotee have, or is he or she displaying? And there will be, you'll see, there will be. Like here's one. On Sunday is the Sunday feast. Everyone likes the Sunday feast. Srila Prabhupada said that there are two, in regards to prasadam, Prabhupada said, there are two types of devotees. One likes to eat prasadam, the other likes to serve prasadam. Prabhupada said, the good news, Prabhupada said they are both good. They're both good. But then Prabhupada said, the one who likes to serve prasadam is better. So, on Sunday, just have a look-see who's serving the prasadam. You may be one of these devotees, with respect and affection, who just isn't really interested in serving prasadam. Is just, just wants to get some prasadam and eat prasadam. But try and note, and it's just an opportunity to put this into effect. It's like a clear opportunity. And see who's serving the prasadam, and thank them, for doing that service. And they will appreciate it. And this way you'll be able to help improve your relationship with them. And it's not just flattery, as I said. There's an old English saying, flattery will get you nowhere. Have you heard that? Anyway, it's an old English saying, flattery will get you nowhere. You know what? It's not true. Flattery will get you many places, really a lot of places. But we're not talking about flattering. We're talking about appreciating. Yes. Appreciating people, but particularly appreciating devotees, is a very important part of developing your devotee relationships. To cultivate that. Okay, let's see where we are now. Where are we? Oops. Just a sec. Oi. Okay. Let's consider. Now, here's an exercise. I want you to think. I don't want you just to be sitting there like I am a transcendental entertainer or something. I've been giving classes. I gave my first class after I'd been a devotee for about 3 months. And I really give a lot of classes. One year I gave around 1,000 classes. And sometimes, classes, if you give a lot of classes, you'll see sometimes someone falls asleep. You may have fallen asleep during a class. And so therefore, experienced class givers, they every now and then, they drop in a joke. It's Krishna conscious, but it's a joke because it wakes the people up. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do to wake devotees up. But we're not just going to do the sort of seminar where you just sit there passively and write notes, although that's very good, and you will be doing, a lot of that. But this is the type of seminar which will also be interactive in different ways. And you will interact with yourself. You'll have to think about something to do with you, which is related to the state of your relationships. And you'll have to think about it, and then the devotee sitting next to you, you'll have to turn around and tell them and discuss it a little. That's what we're going to do, devotees. Fasten your seatbelts pretty tight. So what we're going to do, you see it says there on your simple outline page, exercise. Well, we just told the transcendental story, right? Exercise. What is the worst thing about you? Let me just see, where are we here? What is the worst thing about you? That you know about you, and that, what's something bad about you, which, what would be the thing I would like the least if I had a relationship with myself? Do you get the idea? Now, you're another person who's interacting with you as you are. Yes, as you are. I want you now to think, don't just write something, but think first, what quality, or, like fault, shall we say, do you have which you know about? But if you were another person having a relationship with you and they discovered that you've got this fault, it would tend to turn them off you. Do you get the idea? Is that clear, or is that clear? It's sort of clear? Please think about it. It might be like maybe when you're hungry you get angry. Maybe, anyway, you've got some bad habits. So please think, what is the worst thing, or a few bad things about you? And devotees, write them down. Okay? I am going to give you 5 minutes. Okay? And so you do that. You write down at least one, but you can do 2 or 3 or 4 if you like. you're a perfectionist. You tend to open there's a saying, big mouth, small brain, bad combination. You just say things without thinking about them. You get the idea. These types of things. Write down at least one, maybe a couple, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do within 5 minutes. There you go. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Maybe you're sarcastic. Sarcasm is humor in the mode of ignorance. Yeah. Someone has tried to cook some prasadam for you, but they made a mistake, and it's not so nice. And so you say, oh, what nice prasadam. That's sarcasm. Humor in the mode of ignorance. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'll give you 2 more minutes. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, or maybe you don't have any bad things. Well, that'd be very nice. Yeah. Then, okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Are you ready? Is anyone not ready? So, okay, let's carry on. Now you know what we want you to do. We've made you think. That's good. About yourself. Good. Now, what we want, there are different ways of doing this, but seeing it's our first exercise, let's do it in a very simple way, is that we want you to turn to the person next to you. If you're a threesome, then you just try and do it amongst the 3 of you. If the person sitting next to you is either your wife or your husband, you might want to exchange places with someone else, because you've probably done some variation of this thing before anyway, maybe even regularly. So you can change places if you like. I would even advise it, actually. But we want it to be productive. So therefore, what you do, now you've got your partner. And partner number 1, one of you's number 1, the other's number 2. So number one, you tell your partner that, I'm whatever it is, I'm sarcastic, I'm not clean enough, or I'm these, whatever it is. And now your partner, because now we want your partner not just to think about himself or herself, but to think about you and give you a little advice, a little input, as from an objective position. And that's why, husband and wife, they're prone to not be as objective with each other. Anyway, it depends, but someone giving some objective advice, and you might learn something. Yeah, I shouldn't do that, and there's a way you can suggest that, you can do something about it. Do you understand? Okay, go for it. I'll give you, let's see how long it takes. So, okay, come on, join up. Don't be shy. Anyway, do the needful, but do it now. And we want to hear talking, discussion.
Can I just announce one thing?
Oh, okay.
Hare Krishna. There is one black car, a Toyota car, that is blocking another person's way. Is it anyone in the car?
A black Toyota. Okay. Let's hear some discussion. We want to hear some discussion, devotees. Some advice, some input, some ideas. Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, 1 minute. And if you're given some advice, write it down. If someone gives you a suggestion, you've got a problem, and they say, well, you know what, you should try doing this, write it down. Because we are here, and then you can keep your notes with you and refer back to them from time to time and remind yourself and all that. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So 30 seconds. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. 20 seconds. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.5, 1.25, 1 3/4. Okay, thank you, devotees, for getting into this. And I hope you learned something. I really hope you learned something. So what I'll do now, we don't have a lot of time left. We got another, 10 or 12 minutes, something like that. I'm going to just run through a few common problems in relationships Like common problems, I mean our problems, some things which are wrong with us, which may be wrong with us, it depends on the individual. But because if you have that particular thing or some of those things, they endanger your relationships. It's just a few. You know, tomorrow we'll go through this sort of idea more, but these are a few basic things which some of you may do one or two or some of, you know, you have to judge. So, a common problem is prejudice. Yeah, I mean, you can write them down, it's a good idea. Prejudice, you understand prejudice. You know, literally prejudice means to prejudge. Yeah, that's the sort of etymological analysis of the term, to prejudge. You know, that, in other words, all of a certain type of person, it could be like in South Africa, a racial group. It's very common. You know, all the African people, or all the white people, or all the Indian people, or all the Hindis, or all the Tamils. You don't have Tamils here, do you? You do? Okay. Yeah, or all the Telugus. Oh gosh, the Telugus. All the Gujaratis. There's prejudice. As soon as you see one of that variety, then immediately you judge the person. Yeah. All the men, all the women. These are very typical. So prejudice. Another one is the need to be right. Yeah, the need. It's sort of like, well, a need. If it's not fulfilled, then you just feel uncomfortable. The need to be right. And an inability to listen to others. We're going to talk about it a bit more tomorrow. You know, it's right. It's the last thing, I think, on the list, but, you know, we won't all, oh no, it's not. Part 4, the last one in part 4. Try to understand before trying to be understood. I mean, this is just very simple, common sense. This is not, you know, Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita or something like that. It's just using your brains a little. Try before, you know, in other words, someone's explaining something to you. Maybe they have a problem or just something, anything. And in your mind, you already got it sorted out, what they should do. So therefore you interrupt them while they're trying to explain and solve the problem before you even know what the problem really is. Yeah, this is particularly for those who preach a lot and like mentor others. This is something you've got to really watch out for. You end up thinking you know the answers to all the questions. So as soon as you hear that just the first little bit of, you know, whatever is under discussion, you already got the solution. So we call it seek to understand before trying to be understood. And, you know, there's a few points, and it's one of them that if all you get out of this seminar is that you really get this point, you'll be greatly benefited. You'll really be greatly benefited. So anyway, okay, so an inability to listen to others, especially when we disagree with their views, but any time, ultimately, pride in what we think is right. Yeah. A need to control. Yeah. Resistance to being corrected. You know, this type of devotee, well, it's sort of like, it's almost like the Devasa Muni syndrome. If you know about Devasa Muni, that, you know, Devasa Muni is a sort of, not actually devotee really, but just, he's a sage. Yeah, he's a sort of sage or sort of person. If he sees someone looking at him, you know, not even like that, but just sort of, you know, just glancing, and he asks, "What are you looking at?" Yeah. "Why are you looking at me?" Oh. Yeah. So a person who's got a resistance to being corrected, of course, you know, correcting fault is one of the most, if not the most, sensitive parts of Krishna consciousness. How to correct fault in someone else. Yeah. How to explain to a person, if you can see, and you know, if it's clear that actually this person is doing something wrong. They really are. If it's clear, and now you have to explain it, you should be ideally an advanced stage of, you know, devotee relationships is that you become able to explain to someone what's wrong with them in such a way that they thank you and they feel benefited, that, yeah, I learned something today, this will help me to grow as a devotee, rather than, now, why is he criticizing me? Yeah, because I'm a good guy. So, but that, of course, to be able to do that is an advanced level, but we would like to see you all come to that sort of level of being able to correct others so they feel really happy that you did it. You know, there's a saying that an expert in this sort of thing can tell a person, pardon my French, but can tell a person to go to hell in such a way they look forward to the journey. Have you heard that one before? Yeah. Because, you know, to tell a person like that, it's bad, you know, it's insulting. Just get out. But to be able to tell them just get out in such a way they think, yeah, I want to go, that's great. I'm going to a better place. Right. So that's a resistance to being corrected in service or being made aware of shortcomings. And then a very, very simple one, and we've already basically mentioned it in a slightly different way, not being able to take charge of our emotions, but rather being dictated to by our emotions. Yeah. Emotions, of course, we're all emotional. And if we weren't, if we were just like machines, or, you know, like the impersonalists try to be, just like stones or something like that, like heartless, then life would just I mean, at best it would be really dull, and I think it would be just, painful actually. But the thing is, if we are dictated to by our emotions in situations where intelligence is required, then, well, like I said, sort of more or less at the beginning, you can destroy relationships. You can destroy a relationship in a matter of seconds, which might have taken you years to develop the relationship. And that's really a shame. That's just tragic, actually. Okay, devotees, so look, there we go. It's 9 o'clock. I mean, we're just getting into it a little bit. Excuse the story. The story was a bit, anyway, I know. Yeah. Excuse the story, but I hope we've started, with at least a few things which are making some sense. And we will continue tomorrow the program. The basic outline is there, right? You've got your copy of it. We're going to start by going through some things which will help us in our relationships. And then, you know what we're going to do, devotees? Brace yourselves. We're going to ask a few of you to volunteer, to act out, to do little, not everyone, we don't have the time, but little groups, 2, maybe 4 devotees, to act out, doing something which damages a relationship, doing something which it helps a relationship. You get the idea. These types of dramas are really funny usually. They're usually great fun, and they're also very instructive. Yeah. And then we'll go on to the other things, right? Anyway, whatever's there. So we're starting what, 10 o'clock, isn't it? Yes. Starting 10 o'clock. S'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît. How would you say? Si c'est possible. That's French. Si c'est possible. Please be here on time. Please be here early. Yeah. You know what Mahatma Prabhu says? He says for these seminars that you should know if you're on time, you're late. Yeah. If you're on time, you're late. In other words, you should try and be a little early, get settled down and get ready. All right, thank you very much so far. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.